Lightbringer. Boy, we made some friends with that last video, didn't we? So my humble little YouTube channel doesn't really get a whole lot of play except for when random videos go off and they get more than the 50 views that I'm used to. Suddenly they catapult into the thousands. You know, I did time that video to come out on the release of the 6th book. And there were a lot of people that were looking for it, but I've done that before with other videos that were similarly themed and timed, and you know, people just tend to overlook it. I guess I underrated the expectation that, or the curiosity, we'll say, that people had for a recap of the series. And a lot of you had, you know, something constructive to say, even if you didn't agree with my take on Dark Age, a book that I didn't enjoy the 2 different times that I read it. There were some comments that I just yeeted off the platform. Don't waste my time, don't waste anybody else's time, go be stupid somewhere else. That said, you know, if you're kind of newish to my channel, I don't like to make videos where I'm picking fights with people. It's easy content to make, it's bait content. It gets a lot of views and a lot of engagement, and I don't like doing that. It's crap. I hate it when other people do it. I refuse to do it myself. So I'm not making a Lightbringer video with the intent of, you know, poking at people who enjoyed this book or enjoyed the last book or whatever. I think there was plenty to enjoy in it, but in order to talk about that, I'm going to have to spoil a lot about it. So if you haven't read Lightbringer yet, viewer beware. I'm going to get into big plot details, character deaths, and the whole 9. So if that's something you don't want to have spoiled, don't want to hear about it. Your warning is here. Let's go into what's next. First thing I wanted to address was that I thought the audiobook, the book itself, was going to be a lot shorter than I expected it to be. I realized once the book came out that I had never checked the page count on Amazon. When I pre-ordered the audiobook on Audible, it listed that it was less than 14 hours in length. And that jived with something that I had read from Pierce Brown, where he said at one point he went back and cut 200 pages off of what he had written and changed direction because he realized it wasn't working. I felt like that helped contribute to the 4-year delay in between Dark Age and Lightbringer. And so that made sense. I thought, okay, well, maybe he's just writing 2 shorter books. Maybe he's gotten this first part of it ready. That's going to be Lightbringer. He's finishing the second half. That's going to be Red God in 2024, and all will be well. Then the book actually came out, and Audible had updated the stats on it, and it wasn't a 14-hour book. It was a 30-hour book. Okay, there's a lot more going on. I was like, oh, maybe he'll resolve more than was previously expected or anticipated. Either way, I'm sure the fans were excited to get more content in this series that they love, a series that I have loved. I hope that that meant more going forward. Another mistake that I made was I thought that it was only going to be from Darrow's point of view because the only narrator listed was Tim Gerard Reynolds. No, Pierce Brown still wrote this from 4 characters' perspectives. It was just all narrated by Tim Gerard Reynolds, which a lot of the Audible reviewers you'll see, they had an issue with that. They liked the other ones. I personally didn't mind it because out of all of the narrators that I like, Tim Gerard Reynolds is my number 2, number 1 being Bronson Pinchot. If you know, you know. Tim Gerard Reynolds is not only an extremely talented narrator, but he's read some of my favorite books on the audio platform. So all that's good there. I went back and looked at the list of narrators for Iron Gold and Dark Age, and it sounds like, so the narrator for Lyria was different between those 2 books, and it was either Lysander or Ephraim that had a different narrator as well, and then they added a 5th one for the Mustang scenes in Dark Age. Then Ephraim dies at the end of Dark Age, so we're back to 4 viewpoint characters. You get Lyria, Mustang, Lysander, and Darrow. And out of those 4, obviously Darrow is the focal character, and you get a lot more Lysander. The title Lightbringer, in case you forgot, it was a nickname, a battle name given to Silenius Aulun, who was, you know, the hero of the Conquering, and Lysander is his descendant. So, you know, obviously the book is focusing heavily on the dichotomy between Darrow and Lysander. He's doing the whole, like, I already forgot what the literary element is, where you have a hero and a villain that are shadows of each other, or their situations flip. At the end of Dark Age, Darrow is stuck with Lysander's crappy little ship, the Archimedes. Lysander has taken Darrow's big powerful ship, the Morning Star. He renames it the Lightbringer. Darrow is falling, Lysander is ascending, and they are the two heads of the opposing force here, even though Lysander is having to fend off a lot of other political challenges to his power, because those in the society, they're all fractious, they are all big ego characters, and they're all fighting to be in charge of whatever's left when this whole conflict is over. You've got Aja Algrimus, you've got the Minotaur who's rising, you've got Ajax, Atalantia. Aja's dead. Atalantia is her sister. Ajax is Aja's son. Aja died at the end of Morning Star. And then there's a huge, complicated Game of Thronesian conflict with the Rim Lords out in Ilium. And between the good and the bad of this story, I categorized that one very heavily under the bad. It almost feels like this is an entire other book, and I'm not just saying like another volume in this series. The conflict between the Rim Lords and the Obsidians and all that stuff, it could be an entirely different story. It almost feels detached and different from the main conflict of Red Rising. I got this feeling, this overwhelming feeling as I was reading this book, like there is any number of big, epic, protracted conflicts that could come out of this thing that would derail the story from progressing forward or even coming to a conclusion. I know that he said that Red God is the final book in the series. Technically this one was supposed to be, but then it split. Understandable that that happens from time to time. But I'm at the point where I almost don't trust that. Not because of Pierce Brown having a record of that or anything. It's just if the book could drag out this far with Dark Age and then drag out this far with Lightbringer, and there's just some new big bad lurking in the shadows, it really damaged my confidence that the story was ever going to end, especially because this book didn't do a whole lot to move towards an ending. At the end of those 30 audio hours, I felt like our focal characters were only in slightly different positions from when they started. Obviously Darrow wasn't on some rock near Mercury anymore. He's, heading with the Rim Lords back to Mars, the last free planet. At the end of Dark Age, Siege was coming to Mars. Mars is still on, under siege and on the cusp of invasion, which is kind of where it was before. The only real action that you get on Mars is an epic space battle on Phobos, which culminated in some of my favorite scenes of the book. Under the good category, Victra getting to kill Ajax, I thought was very, very satisfying. I remember a line from Dark Age near the beginning when Darrow is dueling with Ajax, and he talks about the number of moves per set that a swordsman can perform. And Ajax is near the apex of that. Even though he lacked Darrow's skill and discipline, he had that physical prowess that made him dangerous. And I remember Darrow saying, I need to handle Ajax before he becomes something that I can't handle. And Victra, she was in need of a win after what happened to her at the end of Dark Age and what happened to her son. So I thought it was very satisfying. It showed that she's still capable of the rage and violence and righteous destruction that she has demonstrated throughout the entire series. She was a mother willing and needing to exact vengeance over the loss of her son. Even though Ajax wasn't the perpetrator of that, they did manage to kill Harmony at the end of Dark Age. She was the one that killed Ulysses. But she's looking for more than that. If you're a parent, you know that just one wouldn't be satisfactory. You know that if there are multiple entities tied to the power that is working itself against your family, you're going to take it out on all of them. Even more exciting in that Battle of Phobos was the conflict between Mustang and her Lion Guard and Apollonius Alvalii Wrath and his Minotaur legions. There's a scene where they're trying to capture the Minotaur because the Minotaur's forces have captured Cavaxal Telemanus. And the Telemanus family, they can't catch a break. They're all killed now except for, Niobe, she's somewhere with Mustang's people. All the kids are dead. Thraxa is, she's headed back to Mars with, the main body of Darrow's fleet. But, Cavax, after getting his body half melted in iron gold, now gets his back broken in Lightbringer. And Mustang's troops need a hostage that they can trade for Cavax, somebody who's valuable. And they end up trying to capture Apollonius, but you get to really see his power. and just how hard he is to capture or kill. The flip side of that coin is, again, an ongoing problem that I had with this series, that it feels like there is almost a cheat code level of difficulty, that no matter how much skill and power the protagonists bring to the table, there's always going to be something, like the invisible hand of the writer reaching into the story and changing something to make it so that they can't get a win. There are very few notes of success for the heroes in this one, to the point where it almost removes the dramatic tension from the story. There might be something here or there that pops up where it's like, okay, cool, they finally get a success out of their efforts, but those moments are few and far between, and everything else is just a kick to the teeth. They don't succeed in capturing Apollonius. If you've read it, which, like I said, I'm spoiling it, so hopefully you have. They have to capture somebody else, and they make the trade that they need, but ultimately the Martian forces lose Phobos and have to do a tactical retreat down to the surface. Just as Darrow is almost about to come home to Mars, Mustang calls him and says, don't come. It'd be better if you headed out to the Rim. And he pisses off to the Rim for the next 2/3 of the book. He stops and visits Quicksilver along the way. Quicksilver is often the most interesting character in any scene that he's in. The speech that he gives to Darrow and Sevro in Morningstar, I thought was very impressive, and it's not the kind of thing that you see in a lot of mainstream fiction anymore. He wasn't really giving a political angle. He was talking about a philosophical one, like, I'm a capitalist. We are in space. We should be exploring the cosmos, but we're stuck in this stagnant political state where the Golds are hell-bent on keeping everything exactly the same so that they can control it. We're not expanding. We're not growing. We're just dying. And, he's got the best tech, the best toys. He's the richest guy. I think there was at least sense behind his reasoning to abort the war and leave. It was a dick move, but as you see in Quicksilver's history, especially, the scene where he explained to Darrow why he carries that golden eye on a ring, it's like, that's also a founding element of his character, is that, he had to come to grips with the fact in his past that if he wasn't a coward, he was at least very self-centered when it came to even the most important things to him. And the only people that he had told his dark secret to were Darrow and Matteo, his prized pupil and his husband. So, I think it's at least consistent, and it follows the elements of consistent writing, but it made it difficult to admire him as a character, to say, hey, I'm going to start this entire thing. Okay, it doesn't work. I'm leaving. Makes sense. Maybe even on some level it's defensible, but it was another dour note in a long symphony of dour notes. I did write down the rest of the stuff here that I liked and disliked. The Battle of Phobos, the Minotaur himself as a character I find very compelling and very entertaining to read. The scene where he captures Darrow and Cassius, and he tricks Darrow into coming to try to rescue Sevro, and he even finds their nuke, and he's like, you're going to duel me. And Darrow goes to duel him, and the Minotaur knows how to beat the Willow Way. This again leads to one of the more interesting elements of the story, but the Minotaur won't kill him because he isn't able to beat him at the height of his powers. Then there's interference. Sevro shows up in a star shell. He rescues Darrow and Cassius. They get out of there. I liked Sevro's arc in this. Sevro himself can kind of come off as a cheat code in this story, where Darrow's in trouble. Well, here comes Sevro, and he's just capable of breaking anything and killing anyone. And no, Sevro takes it on the chin, and he's got to show his humanity in this one, especially when he gets the news that his son died. That changes his direction in the war. That makes him keep going on with Darrow and Cassius to the Rim. His motivation is suddenly there. And he has a really powerful heart-to-heart with Darrow in this book, where they speak to each other not just as brothers, but as fathers. As far as I know, I don't think Pierce Brown has any kids, but he does write a father very well. When Iron Gold came out, I was close to the same age as Darrow in the story, and Darrow had a 10-year-old son. My oldest wasn't that old at the time, but I felt like he wrote the scenes between Darrow and Pax very convincingly. He did a very good job on that. And then when he had these two friends who've been friends for such a long time, and now they're both fathers, I've had difficult conversations about fatherhood and loss with friends of mine that struck those right notes. the way that Brown wrote them between Darrow and Severo. He did a great job there. Credit where it's due on that. So we're getting good arcs with some of these characters, but again, in terms of tactics and logistics and the overall progression of the story, again, very, very little happens. They go out to the Rim. They spend a huge amount of time solving a conflict between two of the Sons of Ra, Diomedes and Atlas. The Volsung Fa arc comes to a conclusion. You find out what kind of scary, deceitful BS is happening there. We have, I want to say it's a shocking betrayal of Lysander to Cassius, but at the same time, I don't feel like it was that shocking. I was annoyed when Lysander betrayed Cassius and killed him. I wasn't that shocked because it falls again under that umbrella of a hardship cheat code where rather than having a character do something that might speak to a nobler spirit, instead he just does whatever might be needed to protract the story, to drag it out even longer. Lysander kills Cassius. He lies about what the Republic was doing. And then he goes and sacks Demeter, and he heads back to the core with even more power and wealth and everything than he had before. And with a few changes and a few characters out of the way, we're basically back where we were at the end of Dark Age. Mars is under siege. Darrow's got some thinly resourced allies. Lysander has the Morning Star. It's now called the Lightbringer. And that's it. That's where we're at. It was infuriating to get to the end of the book, and that is all where we were. That's all that we had. I felt like I had wasted a lot of time reading that. The little good and great moments along the way did not get us anywhere closer to where we were going with this series. I know there was one book left. At the time of me finishing that book a week and a half ago, I can tell you I was ready to swear it off, and that I didn't care what happened after this. What confidence did I have that it was going to end? I do think it will, now that my response to that has simmered and gone down a little bit. Okay, he'll probably end it at this point. And I'm curious to see where it's going to go, but I am not chomping at the bit to get there. I'll probably wait until the book comes out at the library, and I'll read it then. I'll have a response after most of the world has read it, and that's that. In my personal library, this book remains a trilogy. If you've enjoyed the last three, if any one of those are your favorite, power to you. I'm glad that you found something that you liked. This, for me, has been a very unsatisfactory experience from an author that has shown that he can give me a very satisfactory experience. But all of this is just my take. This is not a deterrent against you for reading it. And I think if people want to, they definitely should. Everybody should read what they want. This is my 2 cents. So, Lightbringer from Pierce Brown didn't really take us anywhere that we were expecting to go. It's too hot in my shop. I need to go inside now. Anyway, check out relevant links below for more reviews and stuff from me. Till next time, drive safe. See you out there.